And may we have the resource persons all joined. Tushin sir.
Yes, Father. Thushyant sir.
Then, yeah, then Dr. Peter, Dr. K.S.
Yes,
Hari.
Dr. Peter and K.S. Hari. Everyone is yes, Father.
Welcome, sir, for this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. K.A. Hari is also our alumni. Which year Dr. Hari studied here?
Yeah, I was there during 91 to 96.
Oh, yes,
Long back.
Long back. So
Yeah.
have the Professor P.R. Bose,
Yes,
English
yes.
sir,
Yeah,
Stephen
yes.
sir, they would
Yes,
have all
yes.
taught you. Yeah.
Yes. All were there. Including Tube sir onwards, everybody was there.
Yes. Okay. Joni sir also. Maybe
Yes.
politics.
Jodin sir was also there. Chandran sir was there for history.
Yeah, for the history. Yeah.
And Chitlapalli Achan was there for political science.
Yes.
He was a principal that time, but still he was teaching us political science.
Oh, yeah. Fine. Thank you, sir. Thank you. You're from now, sir. You are working in.
I am working in Gokhale Institute, Pune. Yeah.
Pune, yeah.
I am from Vallangalur, very nearby place only.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So once in a while, when you come to house, you must definitely come to our college also.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Now, this year we are starting economics, BA economics in the self-financing mode also.
Okay.
This year
That's
we are
good.
starting.
That
Good afternoon, one and all. With great pleasure, we, the Department of Economics, welcome you all to the one-day international webinar on economic development in India, different perspectives. This webinar is an opportunity for all of us to get an insight into the efforts that seeks to improve economic well-being and quality of life of Indian people. The sessions will be handled by three eminent speakers: Dr. Thushyanthan, Bhaskaran, Professor, School of Economic Disciplines, University of Siegen, Germany; Dr. Peter Raj, Associate Professor, KILA Institute of Local Administration, Thrissur; and Dr. K.S. Hari, Assistant Professor, Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, Pune. Now let us move on to the inaugural ceremony of the seminar. Let us start the program with a silent prayer. Thank you. We have with us our beloved Reverend Sister Rosalie Video, Head, Department of Economics, Christ College Autonomous, Irinalakuda. I invite you, Sister, for the welcome address. Sister, please take over the session.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good afternoon, one and all. Most respected Principal, Reverend Dr. Jolie Andrews, Manager, Reverend Father Jacob Nerenya, respected keynote speakers, Professor Thushyanthan Bhaskaran, Dr. Peter M. Raj, and Dr. K.S. Hari, dear faculty members from different colleges, and my dear friends. Economic development generally refers to the sustained and concerted action of policy makers and communities that promote standard of living and economic health of specific area. The COVID-19 outbreak is rapidly evolving into human tragedy by disrupting economic activity. A series of discussions would happening on the impact of COVID-19 on economic development. In this scenario, it is better to discuss about economic development from different perspectives. Yes, today, here we have eminent speakers to discuss about it. With great privilege and gratitude, I am honored to welcome Dr. Jolie Andrews, Principal, Christ College, Irinalakuda, who is delivering inaugural address. We are lucky enough to have a very enthusiastic person and also a good initiator as our principal. Father, with immense pleasure, I welcome you to this webinar.
Thank you.
Our manager, Reverend Father Jacob Nerenya, CMI, is here with us today. Father is a very good motivator and also ready to be with us in all our initiatives as a guide. With great respect, I welcome you, Father, to this webinar. Here we have a very eminent resource person, Dr. Thushyanthan Bhaskaran, Professor, School of Economic Discipline, University of Siegen, Germany. He is formerly an assistant professor for public finance, University of Göttingen, Germany. He is also a member of editorial board of journals like European Journal of Political Economy, Public Finance Review, and Journal of International Tax and Public Finance. He is a member of the Standing Committee of Public Finance of the Verein für Sozialpolitik. He is also acted as a policy consultant for social decentralization and budgetary stability and fiscal relations across government levels in times of crisis. He has published a number of articles in peer-reviewed journals like Journal of Economic Geography, Public Choice, Journal of Development Studies, American Economic Journal, etc. On behalf of all, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Peter M. Raj, Associate Professor, Kerala Institute of Local Administration, KILA. Currently, he is the research guide of Central University of Kerala and University of Kannur. He has attended a number of international conferences and presented papers in several universities, including Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard University, USA, and London School of Economics. His name is associated with capacity building and local government reform initiative of Government of Kerala and Ministry of Panchayat Raj, Government of India. Has been a part of several development initiatives of UNICEF and UNDP. On behalf of all, I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sister.
Here we have a very eminent resource person and alumnus of Christ College, Irinjalakuda, Dr. K.S. Hari, Assistant Professor, Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, Pune, Maharashtra, India. He has worked as an assistant professor of Central University of Kerala and Sardar Patel Institute of Economic and Social Research, Ahmedabad. He has completed number of research projects and published a book, namely Seasonal Migration and Labors in Maharashtra, and also published number of articles in peer-reviewed journals like Indian Journal of Regional Science, Journal of Asian Economic Integration, etc. We are very happy and proud that we have with us our own alumnus as our resource person. And on behalf of all, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
This international webinar has become meaningful with the participation from different parts of the world. With great pleasure, I welcome all the participants to this webinar. This webinar would not be possible without the great effort of the team behind this. I take this opportunity to welcome our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Jobinson P. Ponminicheri, and also all the faculty members of Department of Economics, Christ College, Irinjalakuda, who worked behind this. Once again, I would like to thank Professor Thushyanthan Bhaskaran, Dr. Peter M. Raj, and Dr. K.S. Hari for receiving our invitation and being with us today. Wishing you all a very informative and wonderful session ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sister. Now we have our principal, Reverend Father Dr. Jolie Andrews, for the inaugural address. Father, we are very happy that you are always with us to lead us. With full respect, I welcome you, Father, for the inaugural address.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible to all of you and clear.
Yes, yes, Father.
Dr. Thushyanthan Bhaskaran from the University of Siegen, Germany. Dr. Peter M. Raj from KILA. Dr. K.S. Hari from Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, one of our prestigious alumni. Father Jacob Nerenya, the fatherly figure of all our institutions, the manager of Christ College Autonomous Irinjalakuda. Sister Rosie Vio, the convener of today's program and HOD of the Department of Economics. Dr. Franco G. Francis, organizing secretary, and other organizing members, including Shashisar, Jean Maria George, teacher and Mary teacher, the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Robinson, and other faculty members from the different institutes, research students, and my dear friends. I'm very happy to inaugurate this international webinar that has been organized by the Department of Economics. And the topic of the webinar is Economic Development in India from Different Perspectives. What comes to my mind is the different economic perspectives that we can think about India. One may be a perspective that was offered by the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, who always saw we should have a village-based economy. Then another perspective would be a Nehruvian perspective, which was in a way a mixed economy based on socialistic principle. Then came the liberalistic economy during the time of P.V. Narasimha Rao. Then the finance minister was Dr. Manmohan Singh, who opened up India to the world. And as a result of GATT agreement and the World Trade Organization agreements, the privatization started. Then perhaps another important milestone would be the demonetization that happened in India. Another benchmark would be, which we can see, would be the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. We have to evaluate the different aspects of all of these scenarios and has to come forward with new initiatives and creative ventures whereby we can see how India can grow together, how every Indian can grow together. So that would be perhaps one of the benchmarks which would be discussed perhaps in this webinar. And I'm not an expert in economic phenomena, so perhaps may I stop here. And then I would have only a word about the Christ College. The Christ College was started in the year 1956 by Carmelites of Mary Immaculate CMI Fathers. And this was the first indigenous religious congregation. And that was founded by St. Kuriakos Elias Chavra, who himself was a visionary priest who always saw education as a tool of always as a tool of empowerment and enlightenment. Now, we can always think about the Christ College in this present scenario, where there are around 29 different branches and more than around 4,000 students. And we can say perhaps the Christ College has got the largest enrollment of the number of the students as far as the number of students has been concerned. So I once again congratulate one of the vibrant Department of Economics, who is hosting this third international webinar this year itself. My heartfelt congratulations to all of you. A special word of appreciation towards Sister Rosie Vio, who is the convener of this today's webinar and the HOD of the department. Also, the organizing secretary, Dr. Franco T. Francis, and the other members of the department, Shashi, Jean Maria George, and Anne Mary. Sincere appreciation to all of you. Have a wonderful day. May God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I formally inaugurate this international webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for your kind words. Now we have with us our beloved manager, Reverend Father Jacob Nerenya CMI. Father is always with us in all our programs, rendering his full support and guidance. With due respect, I welcome you, Reverend Father, for the felicitation. Father, please.
Thank you. Respected Principal of Christ College, Autonomous, Reverend Dr. Father Jolly Andrews, CMI, Vice Principals, keynote speakers, Professor Thushyanthan Bhaskaran, School of Economic Disciplines, University of Siegen, Germany, Dr. Peter M. Raj, Associate Professor, Kerala Institute of Local Administration, Thrissur, Dr. K.S. Hari, Assistant Professor, Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, Pune, Sister Rosie Vio, Convener and Head of the Department of Economics, Organizing Secretary, Dr. Franco T. Francis, Organizing Committee members, all others who are taking part in this international webinar. I am very happy to be here along with all of you to take part in this webinar. I think all of you will have a curiosity to know the economic development of the country, especially during this Corona season. Actually, it is the need of the time to know all this subject in a detailed way. I'm not going to deal with the subject. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Department of Economics, especially our HOD, Head of the Department, Dr. Sister Rosie Vio, and all her colleagues for conducting such a webinar. Wish you all the best. I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. So, dear participants, we are moving on to the session. So, here are some instructions for the participants. Those participants who are joined in the Google Meet platform, are kindly requested to turn off your audio and video. It is found that some of the participants are turning on their videos. So participants, kindly turn off your audio and video so that we can conduct the session smoothly. Thank you. So without much delay, we are moving on to our session. Firstly, I welcome Professor Thushyanthan Bhaskaran, Professor, School of Economic Disciplines, University of Siegen, Germany. Sir will be handling the session focusing on female politicians and economic development in India. Respected sir, we are really happy that you are with us today. With full respect, I welcome you, sir, for this session.
All right, thank you very much. Let me try to start the presentation. So, can you see the slides? You
Sir,
see my
please
slides?
share your screen.
Okay, let me see how to do that.
There is an option called
now.
present now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay, sir, it's coming.
it's coming. All right. Do you see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be able to present at this webinar. So this paper that I'm going to present is sort of looks at politics and its impact on economic development in India, and it is with three co-authors. Two are Indians based in the US and UK, Sonia Balatra and Yogesh Rupal, and one co-author is an American also based in the US. Okay, so the motivation for this paper is basically a phenomenon that has been happening all across the globe, including in India, namely the increased political participation of women. So here are a couple of images that are supposed to visualize this trend, but really I could show you, similar pictures from any other country, suggesting that the participation of women in politics has been increasing. And within India, this has been a phenomenon all across the country. So it's not only concentrated in in one or two states, but rather something that can be observed across the country. So here in this image, we've plotted the constituencies, state level constituencies, that at one point during 1992 to 2008 were governed by a female representative, who had a female MLA. And as you can see, it's really all across the country that this has been taking place. So an obvious question, or it's not an obvious question, but one question you may ask when you see this type of image is, what are the implications of this increased participation of women in politics on economic activity, on economic performance and development? And on that, there is surprisingly little evidence, neither for India nor for any other country. So we figured that this might be an interesting question to explore. But does exist are studies that look at the impact of politicians' gender on the composition of public spending. Basically, whether female politicians favor higher taxes than male politicians, or whether they spend expenditures on different things than male politicians. But there's no evidence on the implications of these types of spending preferences and fiscal preferences on economic development. And you may sort of hypothesize that the implications of an increased participation of women in politics, and especially an increasing number of female politicians, may hamper growth, at least in the short term, because there's evidence that female politicians prefer more redistribution than male politicians. That they sort of prefer higher taxes and more spending on more social spending, if you will. And this may, at least in the short run, of course, maybe bad for growth. So from that perspective, you may think that at least in the short run, it may be bad for growth to have more women in politics. However, what we show is that this is not the case. That actually within India, it's better for economic development to have a female MLA, to have a female representative than a male representative. And so what we do essentially is to look at state level constituencies and to explore whether a constituency, if it has a woman as a representative in the state parliament, whether it performs better than a constituency with a male politician, with a male MLA. And yeah, as mentioned, we show that actually they do perform better. And what we also do is to study why. And why does this? Why do they perform better? Especially given our initial hypothesis that given their fiscal preferences, you may have expected that they perform worse, at least in the short run. So that's sort of the paper in a nutshell. And now I'm going to tell you a couple of further details. So for our study, we collect a bunch of data. First of all, we collect electoral data from India, in particular from state level assemblies. So we have information on about 4,000 constituencies at the state level all across India for some 30 years. And in particular, we know the gender of the MLA after each election in these constituencies. Secondly, we want to explore the impact of the gender of the MLA, the member of the Legislative Assembly on economic performance. So we need some measure of economic performance at the constituency level. And as you may know, this is a unit of government for which usually no economic data is collected. So what we do is to use a proxy, namely satellite imagery of night lights, following previous literature. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But let me conclude this data section with some details on other data that we use. We also have data on whether or not MLAs have criminal charges pending against them. So more or less whether they are likely to be criminals or not. As you may know, this is seemingly a problem in India, that a lot of MLAs have pending, or political candidates have pending criminal charges against them, and we have information on that. And we also have data on sort of road construction programs at the constituency level, or actually at the village level, which we then aggregate to the constituency, and some other data, which I won't go into more detail right now. So our main outcome, as mentioned, is nightlight luminosity as a proxy for economic development at the constituency level. So what we essentially do is to take these types of pictures that you may have already seen before, sort of satellite images of the Earth at night. But what you may not know is that these are actually not pictures at all. These are actually data sets. So each pixel of these images actually contain within them a digital value that measures how much light was emanating from that particular pixel on average throughout the year. It's well known that night light can only be produced if there's electricity, and electricity consumption and supply is a proxy for economic development. Typically, geographical units that are more developed consume more electricity, and that will show up in these satellite images as light. Okay, so we know for each pixel on these images how much light was emanating, and this is captured by a digital value that is associated with each pixel. So this is the image for India in 1992, and the corresponding image in 2009, and corresponding with the economic development that has been going on in India over these some 30 years. You see that the picture for 2009 is much brighter than for 1992. So what we do is to sort of calculate. So we overlay on these pictures, on these images, satellite images, a map of constituency borders. These are these green lines, these yellow lines, sorry. And then sum up the digital values of all the pixels that are within each of these yellow lines. And this will provide us with a measure for economic development at the constituency level. I should say these green dots are the location of villages. Okay, so this is our main outcome. And here is sort of one piece of evidence that this outcome is a good proxy for economic development at the constituency level. Here we aggregate the data, the light data at the state level, and correlate it with official GDP figures. And as you can see, there's an almost one-to-one relationship. So states that have more light at night, so to speak, also have a higher GDP, indicating that our measure or proxy for economic development at the local level is a good proxy. Okay, so with this, with this outcome, we do the following. We basically relate or study whether constituencies that have elected a female MLA perform better in terms of light output than constituencies that have elected a male MLA. And as you may have guessed, there's one key design challenge, namely that the election of women to constituencies, whether or not a constituency has a female or a male MLA member of the Legislative Assembly is not random. Typically, constituencies that are, I don't know, more urban or more progressive or whatever, they are also more likely to have female representatives than male representatives and vice versa. So there may be, some underlying variable that is sort of driving both the gender of the MLA and economic development within that constituency. So we have, if we were to just correlate these two variables, we would suffer from omitted variable bias, so to speak, and would end up with biased estimates. So to circumvent this problem, we use a quasi-experimental research design, in particular regression discontinuity design. And the idea underlying this design is simply to compare constituencies where the election outcome between a male and a female contestant was very close. And the idea is that if you focus on very close elections, then whether or not the male candidate or the female candidate wins can be perceived as random and sort of, can be perceived as a quasi-experiment. Circumventing this, this selection issue, that constituencies that on average are more likely to elect women will also be on average different than constituencies that on average are more likely to elect men. So that's sort of the research design. We conduct local linear regressions by narrowing the type of constituencies that we focus on, and in particular we focus on those constituencies where a man or a woman won against the other gender in a very, very narrow election, sort of like with 59% versus 49% or something like that. Okay, so that's the empirical design, and this is sort of the picture that summarizes our main result. So on the left-hand side of this picture, we have all the constituencies that were won with increasingly larger margins by male candidates. And on the right-hand side, we have all constituencies that were won with increasingly larger margins by female candidates. And if you look at constituencies, where the election outcome was very narrow, where the margin of victory was, very close to zero, you see a large jump in the performance, in the economic performance of that constituency in the next 5 years, during the next term. And you see that female-led constituencies where a women candidate won, perform better than constituencies where the male candidate won. Okay. So this is sort of the main result of our paper, summarized in a graph, and of course we can do that within a regression as well, and quantify the effect. And basically we find that if you translate this effect on nightlife luminosity onto economic growth, we find that the growth premium of women is so that women-led constituencies have about 2 percentage points higher growth rates than male-led constituencies, or in other words, the growth premium is of a female MLA is about 25%. Okay, so on average, India had a growth rate of 7%, and we find that female-led constituencies have on average a growth rate of 9% rather than 7%. So it's about a 25% growth premium. Okay, so this is sort of the main result. Female-led constituencies perform better than male-led constituencies. It's interesting, but maybe it's not really too surprising in the sense that, of course, if you compare men versus women, you will either find that women do better or men do better, or that there's no difference. So, it's not really too surprising that we find some difference. The more interesting question maybe is, why do we find this difference, especially given the motivation that I've discussed previously in the very first slide, that women may perform worse because they have sort of higher preferences for redistributive spending, higher preferences for higher taxes and social spending. So why then do they actually perform better? And for that, we explore a couple of mechanisms. The first mechanism we explore is whether or not the women that are currently running successful in Indian politics may be more ethical on average than male politicians. Provide better governance. And one evidence for this is that among all the MLAs that win, about 32% of the men have pending criminal charges, whereas only 10% of the women have pending criminal charges against them, indicating that men are much more likely to be criminal, which of course correlates with a bunch of other bad characteristics that may be bad for economic performance within their constituency, such as they may be less patient, less fair, sort of more generally provide worse governance for their constituency than MLAs that are less likely to be criminal. Okay, and this difference in criminality between female and male MLAs explains about 25% of the estimated economic performance gap between men and women. Can also show you the specific results. So we compare a bunch of characteristics, and the main difference between men and women is the likelihood to have pending criminal charges. The women have 10% likelihood, the female MLAs and the male MLAs have a 32% likelihood. So there's a 20 percentage point difference. Okay, so this is sort of the one mechanism that men are sort of a worse selection on average than the current crop of female politicians, and therefore provide worse governance. And sort of a second piece of evidence that is corresponding to this first result is that when they are in office, the net assets of men grow by much more than of women. Their wealth, the wealth of MLAs grows much less if they are women than if they are men. And there's evidence that their private assets, their net assets, their wealth, is sort of a proxy for, in India, is a proxy for criminal behavior while in office, or corrupt behavior while in office. And basically there's this difference between female and male MLAs in how much their wealth grows during office, and it grows much less for women. So another piece of evidence indicating that they provide cleaner governance when they are in office. That women provide cleaner governance when they are in office. Third piece of evidence, or third mechanism, is that women may be more motivated to provide good governance than comparable male politicians, comparable male MLAs. And to explore that, they may sort of, since they are still a minority in politics, they may feel sort of good compared to comparable men. And to show that, we explore whether or not a federal road program, roads built from a federal road program in India, were less likely to be completed on time if the MLA was male or female in a particular constituency. And we find that that there is no difference in the number of awarded road projects between male and female MLAs. But once a project had been awarded, those constituencies with the female legislator, with the female MLA, had much lower incompletion rates, or much higher completion rates than male-led constituency. Okay, so again, women do seem to perform better in terms of supervising these road projects, likely because they are more motivated to perform well. then the final mechanism that we explore is political opportunism. So whether or not women or men are more likely to distort economic policies to sort of secure their re-election to office. And one piece of evidence that women are less likely to distort economic policies is that they are more likely to lose the next election than men, even though they do perform better in terms of economic growth. So even though they perform better on average, they are more likely to be not re-elected than comparable men. And with that, I'm basically done. So in this paper, we study whether or not female-led constituencies perform better than male-led constituencies, whether female politicians are better for economic development currently in India than male-led politicians, than male politicians. And we find that women raise economic performance in their constituencies. And as mechanisms, we identify lower corruption, higher intrinsic motivation and efficacy, and less political opportunism. And with that, I'm done. And thank you very much for listening to my talk.
Thank you, sir. That was a very informative session. Thank you very much. Due to time constraint, we are planning to have the interactive session towards the end of the webinar. Thushyanthan sir, if you are okay with that, let us move on to the next session.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Peter M. Raj, Associate Professor, Kerala Institute of Local Administration, for handling the session on localizing economic development. Sir, please take over the session.
Okay. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So thank you for inviting me for this program. Reverend Sister Rosi, Dr. Franco, and other members. So let me straight away go to my presentation. So is it clear? The presentation has come?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So my topic is localizing economic development. I'm glad that I am here to talk on localizing. I feel the three panelists, one of course for international, one from national, and I am very much local. I think locally local. I am from Thrissur. So that way, I'm glad that I will be talking more on the localizing part of the economy. So here, when starting with this term, people feel sometimes this localizing economy is something new, but whatever may be, the term to describe the localization process differs from context to context, from time to time, maybe from region to region as well. But here it may definitely include some of the terms like local economies first, protect the local globally, from global to local, or sometimes it is going local, from global to local, maybe sometimes called local also. So going local, we have been, thinking loud. We thought that local should be vocal more during the COVID times or any pandemic time, sometimes during the disaster like flood also, we thought local should be more vocal also. So otherwise local economic development or social economics or development economics. So these are, some of the words that may include when we try to, understand the word localization or local economy. Sometimes the localization replaces or sometimes trying to reorient consumers with citizens and producers. I remember 2020, January 1st, in my institute, KILA, quite often, the teachers, the students, the researchers come. One +2 student from Thrissur, she told us that she's happy with herself And she's respecting her basically because she's a producer. Even at the age of, maybe 15 or 16, at the, she was studying this +2 only. We asked why you have become producer now. How? So she said she's an active member in agriculture club in the school. And that way, she was relating herself with the agricultural officer of the nearby Grama Panchayat, the rural local government. And she tries to transfer the learning from the agriculture club. And with less than 5 cents of land, she started producing, or the homestead farming, or the green, agriculture and horticulture, all those things. So she said, rather than a consumer, I like to be a producer. So that is a type of reorientation that may give, a place when we start thinking of localization or local economy. And sometimes it is long trade routes, for example, foot miles with short trade routes. This has been very much clear during COVID times, because this is a time that we start respecting and depending on the local markets, because the food items were facing constraints to travel long routes. So people started cultivating agriculture and other related products. So this is short trade route and global decisions with the local decisions. So in a globalizing scenario, quite often decision is taken globally, largely by corporates sometimes, or majority times, and local decisions is not at all taken care of. Maybe sometimes the decision pending with the Delhi, the parliamentarians, and sometimes the decisions pending with the legislators, in the case of Kerala, Trivandrum, or any other state capital. But here, how we try to transfer the decision-making capacity to the locals. And sometimes it is social polarization and exclusion with the social inclusion. Because social economy or localized economy is trying to interact with persons, with local producers, with the local citizens. So that way, it is trying to include everybody. The Sustainable Development Goal, Agenda 2030 is telling us to include everybody. I know in some of the local governments of Kerala are thinking ways how to make the differently abled people, the people having some disabilities, also becoming producers. They also become part of the income generation activities of the locality. So this is some way mainstreaming everybody into the mainstream society, the social order and the economic order. So here, these two words, localizing economy and economic localization, are quite often used synonymously. So here, localization or economic localization is a process. It will never happen. It's a process. It is gradually happening. So quite often it is a result of moral, political, practical support for locally owned business people using local resources. So it is some way understanding the locality in detail. It is understanding the locality in detail, placing a trust in the local community, and providing all necessary support for the people who try to do some local economic activities. So last week I heard one presentation from Nepal, being part of the national international webinar. Some of the local government leaders from Nepal, they said they organized local mobilization strategies by combining lot of interacting people from national as well as international markets. So that is also possible. Sometimes the national government is doing global investors meet, and local actors, I will not say it is local governments alone, the local actors should start doing the the local investors meet. That is also sometimes called social economy. So taking everybody on board, all the local actors who can do lot of things to increase local production should be brought together. So that is called the local investors meet. Some people may have time to invest. Some people may have resources to invest. Some people may have their own abilities and capacities to invest. That counts a lot. So gradually, the localization process may lead to self-sufficiency. Again, self-sufficiency, we have been discussing a lot. Prime Minister of India has been discussing this. And Chief Ministers of several states, including Kerala, have been discussing on the importance of local or the self-sufficiency during some of the situations like pandemic, like COVID. So it should be any time, not merely on pandemic situation. So when we have trust on local economy, it becomes diversified economy. So we need not try to stick on to one or two items. So Kerala is facing a lot of issues because of this, monoculture, rubber plus. So the diversified economy is taking place at the local level thanks to the localized economic interventions. So maybe sometimes and gradually it is becoming a tool to, for alternative trajectory to economic globalization. So there is economic globalization, the global economy, and there are a lot of positives for globalization we know. But maybe the evil effects of the global economy, globalization need to be counted. But India, a lot of reverse things also is happening. Now the trends are even to open up local economy to the global investors, to the corporates. That's also dangerous. So that's not really the tendency for self-sufficiency and trust in local people. It may be more of tendency to trust in global investors and corporates. So here, it's not, localization has becoming an inevitable scenario now. It's not merely the academic discussion or theoretical discussion. It has become an inevitable scenario we cannot escape. So even when we say that local markets, it doesn't mean it is going local. Going local doesn't mean that we need to stop the trades. It's not stopping the trade. It is not telling no to global markets. The global going local largely means identifying, supporting, nurturing locally owned businesses and supporting them. It's an issue of finding out local employments. It's an issue of introducing more and more younger generation programs for the people. It's also the issue of reducing the poverty. And it is also the issue of empowering the people, empowering the standard of living. So here, it also means that creating better balance between local, regional, national, international markets. That we call it as glocal. So everybody has to, every systems and subsystems has to coexist on a balancing format. So we will have some, when we tell about going local, we may need to fix about facial limits. So sometimes on a European scale, the spatial limits could be the circulation areas of local papers. When the people are trying to understand each other, the news which I want to know more, that may be that circulation area, the spatial limit. And of course, on a sociological angle, the personal interaction. I, being a student of sociology, I highlight on this personal interaction. This personal interaction maybe it is catering to the local economics, is largely trying to primarily cater to limited number of people, say for example less than 10,000, or the spatial arrangements may be less than 15 miles. So this is some way of understanding the spatial as well as the personal interactive arrangements when we try to go local. Again, economic localization, as I said, it is not something new. In the Shoemaker's, famous books, we see small is beautiful, where the localization is largely thought in terms of ecological economics. We have again booking is coming in with the socio-ecological visions. And of course, the concept of Swadeshi, our principal was trying to highlight in the inaugural letters itself, the concept of Swadeshi, which is trying to understand the village economy getting strengthened and more self-reliant. So that is, we are dependent. We are not. We don't need to be, dependent on others for our basic essential. Not everything. It's the basic essentials. And also, we get a lot of thinking. I am very glad that October 2020 is coming out with a very novel understanding for the economic localization. There are a lot of references in the encyclical by Pope Francis Fratelli Tutti. It's giving a lot of understandings. I think it's worth reading by all the sociologists, policymakers, economists, and others. So we have a lot of understanding on these things in all these works. And here, local economic development as a localized economic development agenda. I'm just trying to understand, highlight 2 points only here. So LED, local economic development is a means to achieve equality, equity, and cohesion. Automatically, it means globalization quite often, the global economy is quite often failing to achieve equality, equity, and cohesion. And it is the local economy, if it is designed properly, can ensure equality, equity, and cohesion. Because in a localized economic frame, people of the locality will have a greater stake. And there will be a lot of economic power and resilience. That means even when something happens at the locality, the local investors, the local producers may take their stand very much. So 1 minute I bring your attention again to sustainable development goals. So we have goal number 8, which is trying to tell us decent works and economic growth for everybody in a locality, everybody in a country, and everybody in a region. And there are a lot of interacting SDGs also, which are trying to support goal number 8, something related to zero hunger, something related to no poverty, something related to clean water, reduced inequalities, which we have been talking a lot. So in reducing the inequalities, localized economy is having a greater role. And finally, the goal number 4 is dealing with education, has a lot of things to, provide decent work and economic growth. And I may say that SDG 8 is dealing with social economy, because it is telling about a lot of social factors. The single factor, single individual, single organization cannot achieve everything. It's a lot of factors, lot of institutions, lot of organizations come together, because before that, there was no much discussion to have safe economy. No, we never discussed about financial inclusion. We never discussed, productive employment for men and women, including persons with disabilities. And we didn't have too much discussion on reducing the youth unemployment. And we never thought child labor too much. So all these 5-6 items, the targets, which is mentioned in SDG 8, is definitely telling us that SDG 8 is specifically dealing with social economy. That is to say, we have to deal with the social aspect of economy. So this is about the social economy.